friends, Dave Paulides, Canam Missing Project. This is Huck TV. This is Huck L. Berry, the executive producer, the mastermind of the program. Yes, she's a Great Pyrenees. She walks the land, protects the livestock, and controls the video footage you're about to see. She's quite the woman. How you doing, Huck? Huh? Good girl. I know I woke you up. I'm sorry. You're a good girl. Yeah, you're a good girl. Yeah, you're a pretty girl. Yeah. Take a little nap now, huh? Ready to take a little nap? Yeah, you're a good girl. You're a good girl. And just a reminder, Bigfoot Cruise coming up. And that will be November 9th through the 16th, Symphony of the Seas to the Bahamas. Dr. Jeff Meldrum, Ryan Goboleski, and Dr. Mariah Mayor. And yours truly, David Paulides. So, we're about ready to go here. We've got quite the program for you today. A lengthy one. Quite an involved case. First heard about this a few years ago. Took me a while to put all the pieces together and understand really what was going on, because it was quite a disaster. Because it involves two people. Two people disappearing at the same time, very rare. Very rare. Two reasons why. People don't die simultaneously. If you go out into the woods, you find a partner and you're hiking around, just the way the body is composited, etc., people die at different rates. And if there's a crime involved and two people are abducted, the chances of that happening infinitesimally small. Why? Hard to control two people if you're just one abductor. Even if you have a gun, if the suspect has a gun and you and your friend, you run that way, your friend runs that way, someone's gonna get away. Don't ever get in a car with anybody forcibly, because you can just figure you're dead. Never get in a car. Fight for your life on the street right there. If you get shot, knifed, you have a better chance of surviving right there than if you get in the car. Just some facts. This case happened in Florida. Now, it's an older case, but major intrigue all around it. Happened October 2nd, 1966. And in a very rural area of Florida, a place called Alexander Springs. Most of you probably never heard of it. Here's Ocala right here. I did a Bigfoot conference in Ocala a couple years ago. Here's Orlando. Here's Alexander Springs, way out in the middle of nowhere. A location that people go to have picnics, skin and scuba dive, beautiful water, absolutely gorgeous spot. Not a place that I would say there'd be a lot of crime. Criminals don't like going to these remote places because there's only a few roads in and out of them. And if you get cornered there, they're going to identify you. Not a place with a lot of crime. This involves two girls, young ladies, Pamela Nater and her friend Nancy Leichner. There's Pamela and Nancy. Pamela's 20, Nancy's 21. Pamela of Clearwater, Florida. Leichner from Largo, Florida. Pam wanted to be a nurse, attended the University of Florida for 2 years, and worked as a nurse's aide at a Clearwater hospital. Very smart, Lots of common sense. Nancy was with her fiancé, a young man named Craig Mackey, 21, of Bel Air, Florida. They'd been dating for 3 years, and they met when they were working together at a place called Honeywell Avionics, the Florida division. They'd been engaged for 2 years, no wedding date, but Craig had recently quit his job and enrolled in college so that they could have a better lifestyle. Now, there's the names of the guys. That's Craig on the top, Ben on the bottom. Craig, Ben, and the girls. Now, Pamela was with Benny Doderman, 21, of Largo, Florida. He worked for Milton Roy Company in St. Petersburg, and they dated for 2 years. These two couples were very well established, very good friends, traveled around a lot together. Get it out of your head that they committed any crime or that they were involved in any disappearance. These are just good, fun-loving young couples. Now, the two couples had planned to travel to Alexander Springs for a picnic gathering of a skin diving club called the Aquaholics. Craig was the treasurer and Nancy was the secretary. They'd been members for 2 years. Now, this was Ben and Pam's first trip with the club. The club went around to different areas, did skin and scuba diving jaunts. This area had crystal clear water, a beautiful picnic area, kind of off the beaten track. They thought that they were going to get away from the crowds on this Sunday afternoon. The group arrived together at about noon on October 2nd. They'd driven 3 hours. It was a planned event. They met other people there they knew. But as they pulled in, they were shocked because the parking lots were jammed full. The rangers there estimated the crowd at between 300 and 500 people. That was a lot. Areas just southeast of Ocala, in the Ocala National Forest. The area is best described as thick woods, crystal clear waters, swamps, lakes, and of course, if you're in Florida and you're in the woods, snakes. I hate snakes. Well, they found a parking place. They got out. The girls had made a picnic lunch. The guys were hungry. They found a picnic table and they sat down and they ate their lunch. The girls were wearing, each of them, a 2-piece swimsuit, and they had a blouse on over their top. It was a warm day in Florida. Perfect area to go in the water and have some fun. The group finished their lunch, and Ben got the job of cleaning the picnic table, throwing away the garbage, and putting the stuff in the car. He saw Pamela last at 1:30 reclining on an adjacent park bench. He said he was busy cleaning up stuff, going to the car, doing this, doing that. Looked around, turned around. All of a sudden, he said, "I saw her 1 minute and she was gone the next." His words. He said that she was laying right near this nature trail that was a loop on the backside of the springs, and Ben thought she took that. He said he finished cleaning up the table and decided that he was going to take that. He was finished cleaning up the table and he thought he was going to put everything away and then jump on the trail and see if he could find her. There was no worry in his statement. No thoughts of anything weird. At the same time that this was happening, Craig and Nancy had already left right after lunch and took that same trail. Listen, Craig said they somehow got separated on the trail and he didn't know how. Remember what Ben said about getting separated from Pam? Now you have this statement from Craig. So Craig said that he kept walking down the trail looking for Nancy. And who does he come across? Ben, looking for Pam. Now the two guys are walking down the trail together, talking to each other because they're friends, trying to figure out where their girlfriends and fiancé were. It was odd. And I read this 3 times about what they said about getting separated from their girlfriends. That's what they said. Remember, the park was at capacity. The guys said that they saw other people on the trail as they were walking along. At 2 p.m., in a populated area of the park, so about 15 to 30 minutes after the guys met each other on the trail, the police later found one witness who stated he saw both young women kind of in the middle of the most populated area of the park called the Pavilion. But that was only one. Now, I gotta admit, if you're a guy, 2 young women in bathing suits walking around, and they're attractive ladies, I would have recognized them. I would remember them. So I'm sure most guys would. Well, Ben and Craig talked, and they thought maybe the girls were actually playing a trick on him because they'd never disappeared like this, and it had never happened to them before. So what they decided to do is they thought, well, if the girls are looking for us out there on land or on the trail, let's do something different. Let's rent a canoe, and we'll kind of cruise around the outer edge of the springs in the canoe, and we'll look for them from the water. They won't expect us to be looking for them there. So they rent a canoe, and they're kind of searching around looking for them. The guys were out on the water for 2 hours. Now, the Springs is a pretty good size lake. Like I said, crystal clear water. Well, 2 hours passes, and they can't find anybody. They talk to members of their club, nobody's seen them. They start to get worried. 4 o'clock, they get a hold of the rangers at the park, and they explain their concerns. The rangers look around briefly and then say, there's something wrong here. They call the Lake County Sheriff's Department. Now, like I told you before, this place is out in the middle of nowhere. Rural sheriff's departments usually don't have a lot of resources. They don't have a lot of patrolmen out there because there's not a lot of crime. There's not a lot to do. There's not a lot to justify a tax base to pay for all these deputies. But Lake County deputies arrive. And as they're there and they're talking to the guys, a crowd starts to build. Word quickly gets out that there's 2 girls, young ladies, missing. Well, several people in the crowd were off-duty firefighters and off-duty police officers and sheriff's deputies from other jurisdictions. And they immediately jumped up and said, hey, we'll help you search, blah, blah, blah. Deputies realized that they were going to need a lot more assistance, and they put out a plea for more help. People later said that it was obvious the deputies at the scene really didn't know what they were doing. There was no structure to the searches, no organization. You take this area, you take that area, no grid searching going on. It was kind of like helter-skelter. And I don't mean that in a bad way, or I don't mean that in the movie way, but it was a mess. The searches went on until late that night. Now, I want you to understand something. These young men were 20, 21 years old. One of them's engaged. The other one's been dating for 2 years. These are serious relationships. As drugs starts to settle in, you start to come to the realization that something really bad has happened. And you start thinking, and you start worrying a lot. The next day, early in the morning, Pinellas County sheriffs sent searchers to assist Lake County. Canines were brought in, and it was stated that day and decided that they would search 8 square miles looking for the ladies. Mistake number 1. 95% of the time, these two would be found within 4 square miles. The reason they went to 8 square miles is they said that in any direction in that parameter, the ladies would have ran into a road, thus not being lost anymore. Walk the road, eventually someone's going to see you. More complaints came in on October 3rd. Unorganized, didn't seem to care, lots of complaints. Also on October 3rd, word starts to go out that these 2 young ladies are missing. Parents are notified, friends, relatives, everybody's jumping in trying to help. October 4th through the 9th, search and rescue continued daily with 50 to 100 searchers. Both families had asked the sheriff to bring in the National Guard. Parents had reached out to other people asking them to bring in the National Guard. October 9th, the last day of the search, 7 days. Pam's parents stated that the trails were very well marked. They said this to the press. Very well marked. And didn't believe the girls would leave them to go into the woods. They believe it would have been very hard to get lost. It was also made known that both girls had left their shoes, their purses at the picnic table, didn't have that with them. Water everywhere, folks. Swamp on the backside of the spring filled with fresh water. It was also confirmed by the families that the girls were both very good swimmers. And both families classified their daughters as outdoors women. They knew how to navigate through the woods. Nancy routinely swam in the Gulf and loved fishing and tennis, said by her parents. The sheriff of Lake County stated that the girls were on a very popular trail that had many people on it. He said on the 9th that abduction was very, very unlikely. Now, even their dates said that they had seen other people on those trails. So taking somebody, let's say at gunpoint or at knife point, the risk of doing that on a trail are so huge. Number one, trails kind of meander. What if you go around a corner and you've got a gun on 2 girls and all of a sudden somebody else sees it? Now they see you. Identification. A few outsiders believe that the girls were pulling a gigantic hoax, reported by the newspaper. Close friends and relatives jumped in and said, there's no way those 2 would do that. They were too stable, had too much common sense, were too smart to ever do that to the guys that they loved. It was reported on the 3rd day of the search that the sheriff of Lake County was 12 miles away from the springs, hosting a barbecue for searchers at a remote, nice cabin. What? This was confirmed by the newspaper. Sheriff got irate and said, well, we got to feed the searchers and I got to give them a pat on the back. No. No. That logic is insane. Searchers search. Sheriff supervises and manages the searchers. Absolutely nuts. Now, they did get approval to bring in a helicopter from the Navy, search for several hours over several days. There's also rumors that they brought in an Air Force helicopter as well. I couldn't confirm that. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Nater arrived from Chicago on October 4th. And they brought along their son Eric, who was a University of Florida student. A year earlier, the family had lived together in Florida, and Mr. Nater was a regional GM for Montgomery Wards. He was on a transfer back to Chicago, so the majority of the family moved back to Chicago. Brother and sister stayed out here to go to school. Leichner's dad owned a gas station in Largo, Florida. In a weird, timely, bad coincidence, Leichner won a trip to Bermuda, a cruise. And both he and his wife had been on the cruise when their daughter disappeared. They got a telegram on the cruise ship about the disappearance. They were able to catch a launch to the Florida coast and were making their way back to the springs. October 6th, searchers reported that 15 square miles had been searched by equestrians, and the search leader on those stated that they were searching inch by inch. Again, Lake County Deputy Malcolm McCall stated that they had no evidence of abduction. After 7 days, search and rescue was terminated with nothing found. Eight square miles surrounded by roads. A lake. There were many of the club that searched that lake for a body, but nobody believed the girls were in the water. And they were great swimmers, so that kind of ended that. So this was October. About a month goes by, and the Florida State Attorney subpoenaed and questioned 14 people that were at the springs the day the girls disappeared. Early on, he stated that he needed validation that the girls were even at the park. I find that weird. Because I thought early on, other club members had seen both the girls and the guys at the springs. Well, after questioning 14 people, the state attorney said he was comfortably positive that the girls were at the springs the day they disappeared. Okay. He refused to say who was questioned other than members of the skin diving club and others. Other perimeter law enforcement people said that they had been told that there were other suspicious men at the park. In fact, before the attorney got involved, state attorney, deputies had gone out and interviewed two of these men. They made a mistake. They questioned him heavily, and then it was proven that the two guys weren't even at the park that day. So they weren't suspects, and they apologized and moved on. More months go by. March 21st, 1967. It's revealed that the Lake County Sheriff, McCall, the guy who was at the barbecue, it was confirmed that the governor of Florida offered McCall the use of the National Guard, and he refused the assistance. What? Why? I've never heard of this before. That's insane. The Leichner family was livid. They made several statements to the press that there was a continuing example of poor professionalism, etc., etc., etc. There was also another report in this March 67 timeframe that said that others, it was a general statement, that others reported that the girls were taken by flying saucers. Now, I know that a lot of people in the paper in 1967 thought that was really funny. I didn't find it funny. I found it interesting. Because, let's think about this. You got water, you got point of separation, you got missing clothes, shoes. Canines can't find them. Trackers can't find them. Where are they? Well, so all of this was happening in 1966-67. You would hope that the Florida State Attorney General's office would make this a priority case. But I truly believe, from the lack of effort, that they did believe that the girls died out there somewhere. Because there was almost nothing done. A lot of rumors, a lot of suspicions. Nobody was ever arrested. Nobody ever charged. And then in 2004, yeah, it was a long time. Almost 38 years. A new cold case team took charge of the incident. 3 years later, 2007, they make a sudden announcement that they're going to close the case. What? No arrests, no prosecutions, no interviews of any suspects. They said they were closing the case and attributing the disappearance and the killings to a convicted two-time murderer. I gotta admit, the guy is fascinating. This is their suspect, Gerard Schaefer Jr. He'd been convicted of killing 2 people, and then he was later murdered in prison in 1995. Now, while he was in prison, he was with a fellow prisoner, and he supposedly told the other prisoner that he killed Pam and Nancy. Now, hold your taters. I've been involved in these kind of things so many times. Oh. Now, first of all, murderers are put with murderers. So, this is a convicted murderer saying another convicted murderer told him that he killed specifically these 2 people. Why would a convicted murderer do that? Because they're trying to get out early. They're trying to get in the good graces of law enforcement. They will rat and say anything they can about someone else, even though there's no proof the other person said it. So Schaefer was sentenced in 1973 for killing 2 girls in a torture murder in Fort Lauderdale. He told this other inmate that he took the girls at the Springs by knife and gunpoint. Knife and gunpoint? Does he have a knife in one hand and a gun in the other? That dog don't hunt. That doesn't make any sense to me. None. Well, this is the kind of person that Schaefer was. In 1983, while in prison, he sent letters to every sheriff in the state of Florida asking them if he was a suspect of any murders in their county. He wanted notoriety. He bragged to people that he killed 34 people, but he never admitted publicly or to detectives that he killed Pam and Nancy. So you see, he wanted the notoriety, but he didn't want to get pegged for anything. Now, it's interesting to me to know the background on Schaefer. Schaefer used to work for a small town police department in Florida as a policeman. He worked there for a short period of time and got fired. What a surprise. Well, Martin County Sheriff's Department at that time needed deputies desperately, and they hired him. He lasted 4 months. Here's what happened. He's on duty. He meets 2 girls. And he says, hey, meet me off duty. I know a lot of places in the county that are cool. I'll show you some nice places. They said, okay. Thinking he's an upstanding person. He takes them to this isolated area, overcomes them, and gets them tied up and ties them to trees. And then he leaves, unknown why he left, but the girls managed to escape. Oh, they're very lucky, very lucky. Obviously, they go to the police, tell them what happened, and voila, he's arrested in Martin County. Kidnapping, false imprisonment, etc. And he got fired. And because of that case, he was later tied to the double murder case, tried for it, and convicted. Now here's some problems that deeply trouble me about this whole incident. First of all, there's no proof anywhere that Schaefer had ever been to the Springs area. The day of the disappearance, October 2nd, 1966, an 11-year-old boy sees 2 girls on a pier across the Springs, across the water on this dock. Quite a distance. Behind the girls, he sees a man. He later told his parents what he saw, and the deputies wrote down his name. Well, this was in an area on the backside of the Springs on that loop trail. Well, remember, when they were supposed to be on that loop trail, other people had seen them at the pavilion. So seeing them on the backside of this loop trail alone with a guy behind him, that's in conflict with other witnesses. And there was only one person, this 11-year-old boy, that saw this. So deputies decide 38 years later, the man is now 49, not 11, and they show him one picture of Schaefer, and they said they ID'd him as the man behind the girls. Sound strange? Oh yeah. And they hung the whole case on his guilt on that. That's it. They have nothing else. The young boy said at the time that the man was just standing behind the girls, like being an observer. He had nothing in his hands, the boy said, and he did nothing to them. When they walked back away, he hung out a little bit, and then he got done and walked back the way they came. That was it. I read that and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that was their whole case. Now, here's the issues. The bodies of the girls were never found. But the case is closed and they hung everything on Schaefer. At the time when they were able to make the case, he was already dead. Convenient, right? Again, from what I could find, there's no proof Schaefer was ever in that area. This is in Martin County, where he was a deputy, and this happened way up here. It's quite a distance. It's like going from Fort Myers to Ocala. That's a ways, folks. Trust me, I've driven it. It's a ways. Schaefer never admitted to police, prison officials, nobody in law enforcement that he ever killed the girls. The sheriff at the time in Lake County said that he didn't believe the girls were ever abducted. Another conflicting point. Craig and Ben described losing sight of their dates in an almost supernatural fashion. They never could explain it. There were 300 to 500 people at this lake, Springs. There were a lot of young ladies in this age bracket walking around in suits. Probably the majority of everybody there was in a bathing suit. The only connection to a crime was another murderer and a 38-year-old witness, 38-year later witness, identifying a picture that's shown to them. Now, law enforcement likes clearing the table of cases. I get that. But I still have a real tough time with rangers saying that there were people everywhere at that park. And now they want us to believe that a man with a gun and a knife forces these two women down a trail and nobody sees this. And the one witness that did supposedly see the guy saw nothing in his hands. That's it. That's it, folks. I'm dumbfounded. I don't take it for granted what law enforcement does. It's a tough job. Really a tough job. But there's so little to hang your hat on in this case. I don't know, I would have done that. I would have put him in the file as a suspect if I could put him in that area. But 38 years after somebody sees someone across a lake, that's weak. From 11 years old to 49 years old? Man, is this young boy at his age, is he going to remember that then? I don't know. But I greatly appreciate you being here. Greatly. And remember, kindness, it's everywhere. You just have to look for it. And remember, in life, you're going to get your test. Somebody's going to come up to you and ask you to do something someday. It's going to be a real pain in the neck. It's going to take you way out of your way. It's going to be inconvenient. It's going to be tiring. But it's that time where you're really needed. And you need to react. You need to help. You need to be that good person. Because how many times in life are we going to be tested like this at a time of great need? We need to step up and be that person to help. Huck and I care about you a lot. Without you being here, we wouldn't be here. She's out for the count.